Hello, everyone. I am Sharita Santiago, your host for Ignite 180. And today we're going to be talking about your leadership superpower, one that's most overlooked, and that's self awareness. Um, I want to go ahead and jump right into this year. This January has been the longest year, I believe, of our history. And we have not broken through February just yet. Just think about it. How do you stay grounded in a society where immigration enforcement is coming into our school systems, in our community, in our homes, making our families feel unsafe? We have situations that are hyperimposed on us, like the shift in the identity months. So when we think about things like Black History or Women's History Month, erasing our cultural recognition throughout our government, that's happened in January. The return to office mandates that are suddenly being imposed, leaving employees feeling unheard and overworked, even questioning their places within their organization. And then here we have tariffs and deregulation shifting the landscape of business and possibly affecting job security, consumer cost, and market stability. And all of this impacts our self-awareness because we have to be honest, it leaves us in a form of feeling like we're in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you're thinking from your reptilian brain. So you don't necessarily have the ability to really reflect on your emotions, how you're showing up in the world. You're really in a space where you're focused on how to simply get through it. So today we're going to talk about self-awareness and strategies to work through maintaining your superpower as you feel the world's instability beneath your feet, knowing who you are and what you stand for and how you impact others will set you apart from other leaders around you. So today I want to dive into a conversation that will help us set the foundation for great leadership and how you can develop your self-awareness skills, even in times like the ones that we're experiencing now. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Self-awareness is broken out, I'll say, in two parts. Self-awareness is identified as part of an emotional quotient or emotional intelligence for some of you all that may be familiar with that term. You have two types. There's internal self-awareness. So internal self-awareness is looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, your emotional triggers, and your blind spots. And we're going to get into your blind spots in a moment. Your blind spots are something that you need others' support and assistance in helping you see about yourself, because there's some things that you don't see about who you are. So we need the support or feedback of others. And then external self-awareness is about understanding how others experience you. So when you walk into a room, how others feel you take up space, or whether you do or don't, do you uphold your responsibility? Are you aware of your interactions, your facial expressions, your thought processes, whether you are domineering or the lack thereof? The problem is, for many of us, we feel like we are self-aware. We have it together, right? Because I'm talking about it. You would say to me, okay, you're the expert, you teach it, and you train in that area, you must know. And even myself, I want to explain to everyone listening that self-awareness in the context of your personal development is an evolving process. Who you know yourself to be today will be different tomorrow. The way you perceive yourself and the way you show up will look different in the future. The very experiences that you are having right now, the relationships you form, the missteps that you make, the accomplishments that you have, all will make a determination for the way that you show up in the world and how aware you are in your interaction with others and the experiences they have with you. But studies show that only 10 to 15 people actually are self-aware. In fact, there are many of us who have a lot of blind spots and don't realize it. I want you to think really quickly with me about a time that maybe you had a conversation in your head after having some experience, and you suddenly realize you could have said something different, done something different, or maybe in the conversation you came across a little wrong. That's a really healthy conversation to have within your mind, because what that does is it says to me, okay, you are self-aware that something has transpired, and internally you are allowing the feelings of your experience to bubble up in your mind. And as a result of that, you're taking a reflective moment to figure out ways that you could have done something different. There are sometimes gaps between how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. And this gap is harder if you are leading others and you want to lead effectively and do not get feedback. I want you, if you're a leader of an organization, a leader of a team, if you are a small business owner and maybe you have one or two people, and maybe you're in an organization and you are responsible for leading small groups, or maybe you're even a parent. Think of the last time you got with someone who you could trust to actually give you feedback. There are tools called 360 feedback models that give you the ability to get feedback from those around you. I would encourage you, if you're looking at this from a personal relationship perspective, maybe in your own home, maybe you get one from your kids, from your husband. I was very surprised when I sat down with my husband and asked him, to give me some feedback on some things. And the ask and the invitation for that level of feedback gave me a very different result than my day-to-day conversation with him. Similarly, with my children and with my friends, I would tell you that if you're leading in an organization, leading a group of people, leading in your church, in your community, wherever you're responsible for influencing another or others, I would urge you strongly to get feedback. And here's why. Feedback is important. Your self-awareness is important as well. So it matters, and you should care, because self-awareness, first and foremost, is the foundation for better decision making. When you understand your own biases, your emotional triggers, your thought patterns, you make better decisions from a place of clarity and not reaction. We oftentimes are leading from a space that's more reactionary and not proactive. The proactive stance is what we're talking about today. It is taking the time to recognize that, hey, I may have a preference for this, or I have a bias toward this, or, people showing up late is an emotional trigger. Well, you can respond and say, you're late, or you can respond in a proactive way to give a proactive approach, because you know that that's your emotional trigger. The second is a foundation of self-awareness is it builds stronger relationships. So self-awareness builds stronger relationships. Again, whether this is business, friendship, family, maybe acquaintances within your circle, people who are often self-aware communicate better. They communicate better. They have a better ability to navigate conflict and are effective in building trust. This is something that's vital to the lifeblood of who we are. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if we're finding ourselves in a state of fight or flight, we may not be thinking about any of those, because that's a version of who you are in your shadow self. In my fight or flight self, if I get worked up, self-awareness sometimes exits the room, because now I'm in a mode of survival. Remember earlier I said that lizard brain, that brain back there, that lizard brain isn't really thinking about much, much whatsoever. So we have to keep that in mind, that as we are having the ability to think and process, let me give you some more context for that. As we have the ability to think and process, we want to take the time to do that effectively. I want to read this to you really quickly just to make very clear. So your lizard brain is part of the brain which is primitive. It is a non-rational self-interest behavior which is attributed. Your lizard brain thinks of the world ending as a more rational side, even though you're not really in danger. So your lizard brain is not rational. The thing that's back here is not rational. So when we talk about all of the things I shared in the beginning, the fight or flight, the stress mode, that shadow portion of yourself, that's your lizard brain turning itself on, and your rational brain, this self-awareness that we're talking about, turning itself off. So we want to make sure that we know the difference, that if you're in a crisis and you're running out of a home, you may not be as self-aware because your mind is going toward survival. Whereas when we're in an office on a day-to-day basis, we're less likely to be in a form of danger unless you're in a high-pressured environment. And again, being self-aware of that is important. Alignment between values, beliefs, and actions. If your values and beliefs do not match how you lead people, they will notice. If your values, beliefs, and actions do not match how you lead people, they will notice, and your trust as a leader will erode. So, what do I mean by that? I'm simply saying that if you think about it as nesting dolls, in the center you have at the very base your values. What do you value? What are your core principles? I'll use the example. I'm a believer. I follow Christ. And I believe in the love of God for everyone, right? So if I believe in the scriptures and the love of Christ for everyone, then as a result of that, that as a value, then in my belief, I'll show that in my actions, my engagement with others. It shouldn't be contrary. So if you're a leader who says as a value, belief, and or action, I think you need to be on time, but you're consistently late. I think that, we need to clarify these particular roles, but you fail to do that for your team. This could very well erode the way that people see you because we're essentially not practicing what we preach. So being aware of yourself, aware of the things that you share. I love church. I think church is one of those places. I look at it like a massive schoolhouse. It's one of those places where you have an opportunity to hear the values and the beliefs being espoused in the space as the word is coming forth. But then when we look at one another, are we actually living those things out? This is something that we have to take into consideration as we lead. The next is personal growth and confidence. So when you know who you are and where you need to grow, you stop second guessing everything and actually make progress. When you know who you are and you know you need to grow, you stop second guessing everything that actually makes sense toward your progress. So when we think about confidence and personal growth, we want to recognize that dismissing criticism, no matter how hard it is, if you're leading, leadership is isolating. You can be a leader and feel very lonely in your leadership, feel like you're trying your best and your best is not enough. You find yourself giving of your resources, your time, your efforts, your energy, and to be met with something like criticism, though we call it criticism, it might be feedback, but to be met with something that you feel is criticism can easily be dismissed. You can easily blame others, refuse to adjust. And as a result, you won't have the progress you're looking for, and you lose the trust and confidence of those around you. Some of the best leaders that I know that I've experienced not only give feedback, but they seek it. They look for feedback, they reflect on it, and they reflect on the feedback to make changes. Now, everything that someone has to say is not going to be reflective in your progression forward. However, if it is something that is necessary for your development, you want to consider it. I heard someone say you can eat the meat and spit the bones, but sometimes you all can't tell the difference between the meat and the bones. So you eating everything and swallowing up some of the wrong things. So for those of you, if you're self-aware that when you receive criticism or critique and you become critical of yourself, that's a point of self-awareness. And you might want to ask yourself, why am I so hard on myself? Remember, We talked a bit about your vision, talked a little bit about shame. And some of the reasons I dig back on those things is because when we begin to self-talk, when we get critiqued, it may be something internal that we need to investigate. So the goal here is not to knock you, leader, but it's to keep you effective. The one thing that I'd like to do as I come quickly to a close is I'd like to help you understand how to further develop your self-awareness. So if you actually want to improve self-awareness, I'm going to give you 5 areas to start with. So the first is identify your core values. What matters the most to you? What standards do you live by? What values do you hold? So we have what's called our lenses, the way in which we look out into the world, your makeup, where you're from, what you love. Do you love family? Do you love gathering in communities with large groups of people? Do you prefer isolation? What do you value as a value system? Do you value time? Do you value money? Do you value effort? You have to identify your core values first, because these are going to be the areas that are going to anchor you when you begin to lead your teams. Second, seek feedback. Feedback is a gift. I shared one time before in one of the podcasts how I was given some feedback by someone in one of the most beautiful ways I think I've ever been given any feedback. It was honest, kind, clear. It was considerate. One of the things that I loved about that was it changed drastically the way that I looked at some of the things that I do. So one thing I want you to do is seek honest feedback. Ask someone you can trust. What's one thing that you might not notice? Maybe what's your blind spot? Think of your blind spot as a sticker on your back. There's a note on your back. You don't know what it says. You need a friend. You need a colleague, someone trusted, to be able to take a step behind you and read it aloud to you so that you know what it is exactly you need to do in order to change or address that note on your back. We listen, we don't judge. If you find that you're encountering people who tell you the same thing about yourself over and over again, the possibility that you need to make some adjustments within is great. Recognize your emotional triggers. What makes you defensive? What puts you on edge? It makes you irritated or impatient. What are some of those things, those moments that really trigger you internally? And then ask yourself, what do those moments reveal about what's going on beneath the surface in you? So again, pay attention to what makes you defensive, irritated, or impatient. If you get in the store and you're like, come on, I need to go, and you're not going anywhere but to your car and home to sit on the couch and look at social media. What's that hurry up and wait about? What is that impatient irritation that you have? Where does that stem from? What's going on with that? So that's something you want to investigate. Next, I always suggest this. I used to hate sitting down to reflect and journal, but it is something that I do pretty frequently now. But I would say write down some key decisions and moments from your day. What worked and what didn't. As you're making adjustments to grow in your personal development, what's working for you? What's not? And what can you learn? We have to really take account for the things that we've done. And sometimes we find ourselves busy in our lives that we don't necessarily make the decision to get still and reflect on who we are and account for the way that we're showing up for the world. And last but not least, mind your attitude. Watch your attitude. Your mindset shapes the way you lead people. It shapes the way you show up in a room. If you feel negative, uninspired, overwhelmed, check yourself. Check yourself and recalibrate. Check yourself and ensure that whatever it is that you're experiencing internally, you're aware of it, and then you make the adjustments to shift. So those are my strategies. The bottom line is that self-awareness separates good leaders from great ones. There are some of you who are really good people. You're really good leaders, but you aren't in the point of great yet. And that's okay because the evolution, the growth is happening in you as you tune in week to week. It's the difference between reacting to life and leading through it. I opened this up talking about the first month of the year just being so weighty. Life will happen, but being aware of who you are in the midst of it and then understanding how you play a role in leading and supporting those around you is going to be critical. So my challenge for you this week, honestly, is to find someone and get some feedback. And what I want you to do is really, really take some time to listen to what it is that they have to say. Listen to what small steps they're encouraging you to do to grow, because great leaders aren't just self-aware, they're self-correcting. So I thank you for tuning in on today. I know this was more of a teaching style in sharing this information, but I hope this sparks something amazing for you. Our next episode, we have Miss Hennifer Gant. I'm excited to have her on because she's going to take this conversation of self-awareness to another level. She's going to be talking about your superpower and how you utilize not just a skill set, but that's something extra in you to help you grow and develop. She's going to be sharing more on your superpower. So until next time, God bless you, and let's ignite the world together.